Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Hello, I'm super excited to be here this morning. I'm waking up as we speak. This is Left Bank Books presents a virtual celebrity story time. We welcome the author and illustrator of Grandmas Are Greater Than Great, James Solheim and Derek Desierto. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore, celebrating 51 years this year. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of James and Derek, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We have adapted and are still bringing you the things that you love the most about Left Bank Books with curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world even. We are happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a signed copy for you or for all of your friends at left-bank.com. And purchasing a signed copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating. It gets you a fantastic signed copy, and it allows us to keep this event series going. So thank you so much for your support. We need your support. Today, there is a special contest. We have done a drawing, so 5 lucky winners will win a copy of this book today, but we are extending the contest, so if you order a copy before Monday, your name will be put into a drawing to win a copy of It's Disgusting and We Ate It by James Solheim. So those will be going out with the books on Tuesday when the book finally gets its book birthday. And there will also be consolation prizes that we will send out as well. So make sure to buy your copy today. About the book. Millions of grandmas have led to one very, very special and unique person. You. A humorous, animated, and informative look at the lasting power of ancestors. Explore families, generations, and girl power in this heartfelt collaboration between James Solheim and best-selling illustrator Derek Desierto. Everyone has 2 grandmas, and every grandma has her own 2 grandmas. This cycle continues going back through time and history, and you needed them all for you to be you. Traveling from generation to generation, this dynamic picture book offers young readers a bird's eye view of how daily life has changed over time. But despite all the differences, one thing has remained the same: a grandma's love. James Solheim's lively text and Derek Desierto's exuberant illustrations capture the delights and challenges each daughter, mother, and grandma encountered. This rich, multi-generational story explores the idea that we are all the product of those who came before us, and it will be enjoyed by readers of all ages. Grandmas Are Greater Than Great includes basic information on exponential growth and a family tree. A gift of a book for kids of all ages to read with their grandmas. James Solheim is the author of It's Disgusting and We Ate It, illustrated by Eric Brace. Powered as a child by his grandma's Norwegian cooking, and I'm not able to pronounce those names of the cooking, so I'll let James do that. He now speaks Norwegian with his own kids and continues his family's traditions. But his grandma's kindness is his biggest family tradition of all. He lives in Nebraska. And Derek Desierto is a designer and artist for animated TV shows and the illustrator of the New York Times bestselling picture book Juno Valentine and the Magical Shoes by Eva Chen, among other titles. He lives in Vancouver, Canada. And now, if everyone at home would please help me in welcoming to the screen with a giant round of applause, make sure that everyone in your house knows that you are watching this event. And I will welcome James and Derek to the screen. Oops, wrong one. There we go. There's James. There's Derek. Hello.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi. We have a great crowd this morning, so a lot of people really excited to see this event. And I'm going to pass it off to you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. And you can order books from Left Bank Books, whether or not you live in St. Louis. I used to live in St. Louis, and it was my neighborhood bookstore. I would just walk 7 blocks to Left Bank Books and look at their great piles of books and shelves of books. And whether you live in Kansas or Maryville, Missouri, or Seattle or New York, you can still order books and they'll send them to you.
Mm-hmm. And I'm putting a link right now so you can order a signed copy.
Great. Thank you, guys.
We brought a copy of the book, a virtual copy for you to look at, and then you can buy a copy of your own, because it's always great to have an actual copy to sit there with and read on your own or with your grandma or whatever you feel like doing. I'll start putting that on the screen. And then Derek and I are going to talk about the book afterwards, and you can ask us questions and all kinds of stuff like that. So do you see the book on the screen yet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I wrote the book and Derek illustrated the book, and he made up the way all these grandmas look on the cover. And I didn't know what they were going to look like when I wrote the book. All I did was imagine the world of these grandmas and what they were doing in their lives and what their grandchildren looked like and what they would be when they grew up and that kind of thing. And then when I first saw the book, it was this amazing picture of all these people coming to life that I had just imagined. And so when you open up the book, there's a title page and information about the people who published it, who did a great job, and a dedication to the people who are behind my grandma world. And then you turn the page and the story starts. So I'll read that to you. You come from grandmas of grandmas of grandmas of grandmas, going back thousands of years. You needed all of them for you to be you. Many grandmas ago, one great, 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 great grandma held a baby day and night, hugging her back to health. And when the child was well again, they both wore big red hollyhock flowers for hats to celebrate. And the baby let out her first laugh. That baby grew up to be your great, 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 great grandma. That grandma was a pioneer and didn't even own a shoe. She had heard of electricity but didn't believe in it. She had survived a war, so fevers didn't scare her. She fanned mosquitoes away from her baby even in her sleep, her hand sweeping time to her snores. That baby grew up to be your great, 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 great grandma. That grandma dreamed of her baby all grown up and fancy, in a house with real glass windows. Maybe she'd even be a teacher in her own one-room school, drawing alphabets in a sunbeam swirled with chalk dust. Then the baby broke the family's only bowl and woke that grandma from the dream. That baby grew up to be your great, 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 great grandma. That grandma knew how to milk a goat and fix a wagon wheel. She knew how to rope a calf. But she couldn't get that misbehaving cloth to be a diaper. So she put her newborn baby's bottom in a bonnet and showed her the stars. That baby grew up to be your great, 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 great grandma. That grandma cuddled her baby in a sleigh, whooshing across a frozen lake. At the lake's far end, an old woman sewed blossoms made of cloth into a quilt. Nobody could fool her into talking to a machine. She pulled that ringing telephone box off the wall and donated it to the chickens. When her family arrived, she sat snoring and swatting flies in her sleep. She woke to find her new great-great-grandbaby in her arms. That baby grew up to be your great-great-great-grandma. That grandma danced with her baby across the grass, laughing and laughing under the town's first streetlights. Lamps on poles really could light a town. When the stars grew bright, Grandma and baby rode to the cousin's house for the baby's first taste of gooseberry pie. That baby grew up to be your great-great-grandma. That grandma took her kids fishing every day so all 7 of them could eat. She led them through fields, digging potatoes the harvesters had overlooked. She stuffed a room from floor to ceiling with potatoes to feed her family through the winter. They needed every one. And she still found time to have baby number 8, the exact baby you needed for you to someday be you. That baby grew up to be your great-grandma. That grandma listened to the radio with her baby and twirled with her baby among the tall trees, giving her baby baths just to keep her in a world of love and bubbles and no wars. After hundreds of baths, she turned the radio on and hollered with joy at what she heard, hugging her baby up out of the water and running outside to find someone, anyone who could tell her if it was true. The war was over! That baby grew up to be your grandma. That grandma swung her baby high up out of the crowd. Sitting on strong, slender shoulders, the child could see everything now, from sun to storm clouds to the band's loud guitars. It was like being the world's tallest person. When the rain came, the concert ended, but not their dancing. This was the baby's first chance ever to splash in rain and drink it straight from the sky. That baby grew up to be your mother. Your mother was about to meet someone for the first time, someone who had never seen light or tasted air, someone who didn't know how to walk, talk, or even breathe. Your mother had so much to teach and share, and so many hugs built up inside her, just waiting. Tiny hands reached out to her from a nurse's arms. Click, 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 click. Pictures flew at millions of miles an hour to far-off phones, igniting instant cheers. Someone had arrived. You. And who are you? You're a hollyhock hat and a grandma's snore, a gleeful squeal scattering chalk dust dreams, a baby's bare bottom in a bonnet under stars, a giggle and a gurgle blossoming from a quilt, a gooseberry pucker in a candlelit kitchen, a potato-stuffed room and a soapy shout of joy, a dance in the rain and a mother's first hug. One hug among millions that took thousands of years to add up to you. And that's the end of the book. There is a thing in the back that talks about exponents, which is how grandmas keep doubling and doubling until when you go back in time, you have hundreds of grandmas with greats on them, and then thousands with great, 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 and all that kind of stuff until you just have huge numbers of grandmas that you didn't even know about. And I want to mention before anything else that at the same time next week, we're going to have a grand people's party on Zoom. So If you go to jamessolheim.com, my website, you'll find the Zoom link. And it's going to be a big event where you do activities. You can bring your grandma, you can bring your mom, your dad, your dog, or if you're a grandma, you can bring your grandchild, and we'll do activities where you talk about things in the past and color and all kinds of fun stuff. Now, we're going to let Derek talk a little bit, and you can ask some questions of us, and Derek will later give a demonstration and a little talk about how he came up with the art for the book.
Hey, thanks, James. That was great. Thank you. So how should we do this? We go over, should we go over how we put the book together, or should we take questions first
Well, I can say a little bit about how I wrote the book, and then
Yeah.
you can take it from there. So, well, I wrote the book with just this idea of when you go back and further back in time, there are actually millions of people that we came from.
Mm.
And then as it gets closer and closer, we have people that we may have heard of, and then eventually we have the grandmas that we know. And so I just started writing a story, making up grandmas going back over 200 years. And then I wrote a version, sent it to my actually agent, and she had lots of suggestions. And after that, we sent it to the editor, and then they chose Derek to do the art. And it doesn't look at all like the way I imagined the book. And that's a good thing, because two heads are better than one. And when you have another perspective on things, it enriches the book. So what did you do when you saw this book show up in your computer?
Well, I think what struck me the first was your words. So before I even had any idea of what the grandmas might look like, I thought your description of them really just leapt off the page. Actually, it helped me tremendously, because when I read the story, the way you wrote it, right away I could see this family. But I was thinking, like, how can I connect them visually where somebody could see, oh, you can see they're all related. And I think for me, the first idea I had was their hair. I love to see, I mean, even for me, I love to see through my own family in their pictures how I can see we're related, whether it's like a certain smile that somebody has or certain hair. I am so interested in that. And so I thought the red hair is an easy visual mark that kids and anybody can see, oh, now they're all related. Also, some of them have curly hair too. It's a running thing throughout the book. They have red curly hair, most of the women. And so that's how it all started for me. And like you, as you were imagining the family when you were writing it, I was imagining this family too. I think for me, it started with, I kind of just started with Golden Girls in my head. I'm like, okay, so this is like Sophia. If you watch Golden Girls, I was thinking this is Sophia's family. And you can see there's a bit of Sophia in the grandmas at the end. But yeah, that's kind of how I started to put the book together. James's words really helped in that process for me.
I think this would be a great time for a couple of these questions, because this plays into. So Annie's asking, did personal family stories inspire the grandmas in the book? And I think both from the writing aspect and from the illustration aspect. That's a question for both of you.
Yeah, there are. So there are some of my own ancestors in there, but they're changed so that they aren't any actual family stories. But I was thinking of some things that my ancestors have done, and I've been really interested in getting as far back as I could and learning about the people of the past. So I've even gotten back to Norway, where my ancestors came from, and researched where they came from, and the folk dancing that they did there, and the songs that they did there, and then when you get back to, so that was so I've actually found people going back hundreds of years, and then when you get to America, for example, one of my grandfathers had the first electricity in the area that he was in, and his he didn't exactly like it very much, and so it was windmill based, and so he had electricity before the other people in the area did, but when the windmill based electricity broke, he said, I'm just going to go back to the old style. And so that's kind of where this grandma came from that tears the telephone off the wall. Yeah. And another one was going out and digging up potatoes for the family and fishing and that kind of stuff. When you go back to the first ancestors in America, they absolutely had to go out there and just catch their food, grow their food, and that kind of stuff. So how about you, Derek?
For me, there are some bits of my family in there that I drew. And one thing that comes to mind is in the photo album, when you see all the pictures of the child's mother, there's one picture of in the top right corner where it's a boy and she's putting her head on that boy's shoulder. That's actually a picture of me and my sister, based on a picture of me and my sister when we were children. Mm-hmm. So I always put little bits, like, I guess only my family would know in all the books that I do, where it's like, whether it's I put my nephew in some of them, or I put like nods to my family. So that's one of them. I'm trying to think what else. I did definitely have my grandmothers in mind when I was doing this book, which was actually a really lovely experience, because I think, the book evoked for me ideas or just also quite a lot of questions too. Like, I wonder what led to me, which actually that's one of the things why I decided to go to do the book, is because I love that idea that all these things had to align for you to be you. And I always, before even the book, I thought about that before, like how amazing that is, that all of these things had to align, for all these people had to meet each time for you to be there. And so I've thought about my grandmothers throughout the whole book. So they might not necessarily be like, I didn't necessarily draw them maybe, but they were definitely in my head when I was illustrating the whole book, for sure.
Yeah, a thing about that is there's so many grandmas. We have so many grandmas back in time. We have 2, 4, yes. 4 great grandmas, 8 great great grandmas, and it actually goes up so fast that 1,000 years ago we have huge numbers of grandmas. And some people did this study showing that if you go back just 2, 3, 4,000 years, everybody on Earth has one grandma in common. And then if you go back about 5,000 years or more, then we're descended from all the same people. Everybody on Earth is descended from the same people 5,000 years ago, or a little more than that.
Yeah.
And most people don't.
We're cousins, basically, James.
Yeah, we're cousins, absolutely. Yeah. And so most people find that unbelievable. But if you look at the study and the math that these people did, it's totally makes sense, because there are, I mean, if people didn't start intersecting back in time, there would be billions and billions of people when you go back that far. And there aren't billions of people. It's because our paths cross and they become the same people when you go back not very far.
That's amazing. I love that.
Do you have any more questions lined up for us?
Yeah, let's do one more question and then we'll go over into Derek's presentation of his art. So, because I know that there are a lot of people that want to see that too. But Sue and Ruth are asking about other cultures and asking if there are any plans to be a version for Black children, is Sue's specific question. But Ruth said that it is such a beautiful book that she would love to see it for other cultures and seeing other kids represented in the pages of the book, and wondering if that is a possibility and continuing the series, since there's so much incredible history that each of those cultures could kind of have specifically for their own unique book.
It's not just an idea, because I've already written a book like that, and whether it exists or not is dependent on whether people buy this book. So you
great idea though.
Yeah, so so here's how the publishing world works. You write a book, publish it, and then if it sells enough, then they will do more books along that theme. And so I've written a book that, I just talked about this theme of everybody in the world is related. So I actually have a book it's similar to this book, but it's completely different in a way too, because you can't just repeat the ideas of the previous book, and I can't just go through the whole thing again and say, well, now it's the same book only with different cultures. So it actually is based on this idea that all cultures are related, and this one book has all cultures in it, not just it's not just based on people coming from Africa or Asia. It's not just the Philippines, or it's not just South America. It's actually grandmas of the entire world. And so you just can hope for that book, and we'll see if my editor is interested in that book, and if the book sells enough that she's willing to do that. And I have another book. I actually have multiple books about grandmas that are on this along this same theme. So this book is all one family, and it's a family that is based on my family. So that's why it's the way it is now. And I would like to write book after book about grandmas from many cultures, but the next one in line is all cultures coming together.
Can I ask James, why specifically grandmas?
Well, it just seemed more straightforward to just have it be one line of grandmas, but I actually have the idea of doing a grandpa version too. So so the next one would also be grandmas, but worldwide. And then the one after that, I would, who knows which one I would do next. Maybe I would do a grandpa one next. So it has to be one idea at a time, I guess. So it's going to be grandpas eventually if there end up being multiple books.
That's great. Okay, should I go through how we put the book together? Okay. So I'll share my screen. So I guess I'll preface it by saying that the first thing I really did was I read James's story. And I thought about that for a bit before I committed myself to paper. But once I finished it, okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. So when I first read the story, I did thumbnails, and this is what I do all the time when I make books. Is I do these really quick thumbnails, and I lay out the whole book from start to finish with the text and the images on the paper. And you can see. Let's see. Can I zoom? I could zoom in here. So you can see these are very rough scribbles, nothing finished, This is actually when the grandma was swatting the flies. I initially had them in bed, which we changed to have them in front of the cabin. some of these stays, this one didn't. Initially, it was in the opening layout. It was just the grandma holding the baby, but which we changed to her walking through a field of hollyhocks. So a lot of these ideas are just my kind of gut reactions to what I think the images should be based on the text. And oftentimes they'll change. I don't know if you remember the grandma who donated the phone to the chickens. That was one of my favorite lines, actually, James. And it was our art director's idea, is like, we should put the grandma in there. And with that idea, I thought it made the illustration even better. So I did this for the whole book. I'll show you actually the evolution of some of the ideas. So like the opening, this was the thumbnail of the initial idea for that layout. And then it was in the, again, my art director suggested, like, have them walking through the field instead. And you can see it was the image of the frame with the hollyhocks of the head, which is what I expanded to be them walking through the hollyhock field. And that's what became the illustration. The same thing happened with this one, with the grandma dreaming to be, that her baby would grow up to be a teacher. So this was the idea. You can see the first idea wasn't necessarily great, and nor was the second one. I thought it wasn't as dreamy. I think that was the comment back from my art director. It's like, make it more dreamy. And so this was what we came up with. It kind of scrawls across the page, and you can really feel invited into the illustration, which I think was a great note from my art director, which I think that's one of the best things about putting a book together. Usually you're not by yourself. As an illustrator, you're helped with some amazing creative people as well, that give you these wonderful ideas that make your illustrations better. And I really love this illustration now. I think it was great notes, and it really hopefully brings the reader into the story. And then this last example was one of my other favorite lines from the book, was about the baby that broke the bowl, or the baby that broke the bowl, and waking up the grandmother or its mother. Initially, this was the idea. It was just the mom and the baby. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll put the dad in. But you can see there's not really, like, the text. We're unsure where to put the text. So we moved it again. I made the table bigger, put them one side, but then now it feels imbalanced. And then, so what we did instead is we blew the whole thing up and brought them center. And you can see all the lines are moving towards the baby this time. The table leads your eye to the baby. Even the edge of his vest, the dad's vest, leads to the baby. All their eye lines lead to the baby. And that's the whole line. The baby broke the family's only bowl and woke that grandma from the dream. So, all of these, it's not always your first drawing makes it to the book. Sometimes it takes a couple revisions. But sometimes, though, your first drawing does make it to the book. And that was the case for the cover, which is very, very rare for me. I think my experience with books thus far has been the cover has been the most tricky, and that it takes many iterations. But this was my first drawing. You can see it's very scribbly, barely understandable, I think, apart from me. I showed this to my editor and our editor and our art director, and they loved it. And that's what became the cover. And so that's kind of my process for putting this book together. It was actually quite, it was easier than a lot of books that I've done before, I would say, just because it just really flowed. And I think it all stemmed from the words. And so it was very easy for me to put it together. It was a total delight, actually.
It was fantastic to see the book and see those grandmas all together. When I first got the book in the mail, or I got the
Proofs.
the disassembled book, the proofs, yeah. And so here I had just imagined all these grandmas for a long time, and then there they were, instantly come to life, and that you did a great job of making all these people real.
Thanks, James. I have a question for you. Are those hollyhocks in the back of your in the back wall of your room? Are those hollyhocks?
That thing hanging on the wall is a rug made by my grandma, and they're fictional flowers. They're not actually any specific flowers, but
because it made me think of the hollyhocks, and it made me think of the quilt that's in the story.
Well, actually, that's interesting because when I first wrote the story, the grates were in patterns, and I visualized the story as having quilts kind of woven into the art, and it's great that it's not that way, because getting a different perspective is good. And I think my idea was too intricate, you might say, and so my grandma made lots of quilts and rugs, and I can show you what an earlier version of the book looks like if I can share screen in here. If I can find my there it is, share. Okay. Share screen. Okay. And
did you do this art yourself?
Did I what?
Did you do this art yourself?
No. Let's see. Okay, so when I'm writing the book, I have a visual idea of what it might look like that is wrong. Okay. And as a writer, I feel as a writer of picture books, I have to
have a visual,
have an idea of what the book is going to look like, or I can't write a sufficient or successful picture book.
Okay.
So on the left, can you see that there's the manuscript, and on the right,
there's
okay. So this is what the story looked like when I was sending it to my agent. And notice it's called Millions of Grandmas Who Are Greater Than Great. That was the title at that point. And instead of "You come from grandmas of grandmas of grandmas of grandmas," it started "You come from centuries of grandmas." I think my agent might have told me that that's too abstract or something. And so I thought it would be great to measure time in grandmas instead of years. And so that's something that I came up with. But then when you get down to how the grates are lined up there, they're lined up in a sideways square.
Yes.
And so throughout the original manuscript, the grates were lined up like that. So when you got the first manuscript, did you see it like that?
Correct, yeah. And it was also called Millions of Grandmas when I first got it.
Right. And then at some point along the way, I thought the title needed to be cut down. And so I've sent maybe 3 shortened titles to my editor, or our editor, and said, "What do you think of these?" And she said, "Oh, I like this one out of those 3." And I agreed with her that was the best title. So, you know, Derek and I are both saying it's our, like we did this and we did that, because the editor, the art director, assistant editor, all these people are working on the book with us. And so it's a group effort, really. Here's another example. Here's 2 of our earlier books. With "It's Disgusting and We Ate It," I naively thought that the illustrator would draw what the foods in the book really look like. And when I got the art, the rough sketches, I kind of went, "Oh, of course, it's so much better when the foods are like these crazy imaginary versions that are what a child would imagine instead of what the food really look like." So that's the perfect example of why, as a writer, I don't want my vision for the book to be what the artist does. And then there's Derek's book with Eva Chen. And would you say that you probably don't know what Eva visualized?
Well, she didn't commit it to paper, but she definitely had, I think ultimately what I envisioned for Juno became what she always envisioned, because we went through several iterations specifically for the character. But I remember just when I landed on a certain one, she was like, "That's it." Right away,
Yeah.
she knew that that was it. But she never drew it. She never drew it herself. She just kept saying like, "This needs to be there," or "This needs to be there." And then when I finally would do those revisions, and I landed on this specific Juno, it was like no contest anymore. That was it. So, I think it's always a process, but I totally agree with you. It sometimes when you yourself, when you're the creator, you're taken out of it, and then you get another person's input. It kind of sometimes makes the idea even better, because it pluses your idea, which, so I think it is a total team effort when you're putting a book together, especially when you're working with a author and an illustrator. I hope it makes a better product in the end.
Yeah, usually the author and the illustrator don't have contact, and the
No.
author doesn't. You said Eva got to choose something about how that character looked, and
Yeah.
usually the illustrator does whatever he or she wants to do.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so you got to do whatever you wanted to do in this book.
I
So what do
know.
you think?
Different experience for sure.
Which way do you like it?
You know what? Both are good in certain ways. I think that's also why it was Grandma's was a lot more seamless for me, because I feel like I put it all out there, and then it was a fluid interaction with the art director. It was like minor tweaks, versus when you're working with the author, it's like, of course, they have the idea exactly what they imagine it to be. So you're always working to realize that idea and bring it to life, which is a challenge in itself, because I wish I could just like peek into that author's brain and then like bring it to paper, but you can't. So it's like it's a journey to like get you to that place. I like both, because I feel like it's an interesting process to kind of, because it's still a collaborative effort when you're working with an author directly, but when you're also working by yourself, it's like sometimes also you have to come up with the ideas yourself. That's also a challenge within itself too. So both are good in other ways, in their own ways.
I have a question. So many of your artworks have cloth in them.
Yes.
Like these people here, they have actual cloth. She has actual cloth in her dress. Do you scan pieces of cloth, or how do you get that into your art?
So I go through Adobe. Actually, you could like download in photos. So I just source these photos online, and I use it. And to be honest with you, how I came up with this idea to use cloth in my illustrations is that when I was I still work in animation. So my day job is I work in TV. But in the beginning part of my career, I was working in a studio, and I guess I was feeling like creatively in a rut, or I felt like I wasn't having enough time to kind of do my own personal work. So I would come in like half an hour earlier to my day before my director would be there, and I would draw for myself. And so it's like my own creative time, but I always found that I didn't have enough time to color. And so I would collage the picture at the end of my half hour in the morning, and I would call it a day. I'm like, oh, good, I drew for myself. Here's a finished product. And that kind of became, I guess, the style for myself, because I just kept doing it. And then now at this point, it's become a calling card, because actually how our editors and how this book came to me was they thought they liked my use of fabric, which I think that was the initial starting point of your idea of having quilts within the book. And so I think that's what brought us together, which now I think I'm happy that that style came to me, because it is quite easy, but it gives the book a lot of texture, which I personally really like.
Yeah, it's great, and it's you also add shadows to it too, so it's not like
It's not just flat.
Yeah, it's like it combines the actual fabric with the shadows that make it have an art. sense to it, but
Yeah.
it's also got a reality to it at the same time. And then where do you get the hair when I'm trying to find the one that I showed a minute ago where the hair, there it is.
It's just
Where do you
real
get the hair?
hair. I think it's just real hair. You can find it online. All these pictures of people's hairs. Yeah.
So I was imagining that you were like going around
Taking
with your
photos?
phone and like sneaking up on people in the park and like
No.
photographing their hair.
No. Yeah, it's my grandma's hair, actually. No, that would be amazing. But also that would be creepy. I would not do that. These are all just online. You can buy these images online yourself, and you can do it too. I mean, also, which is great. People can collage for themselves. I've always loved collaging as a child, and so I think this was a natural progression to do something like this. Yeah. Also, I would also say that I would credit this style for Matisse, because I remember going to an exhibit at the MoMA of Matisse's cutouts, where he just took colored pieces of paper and he would cut it out. And that always stuck with me because I felt, what a great idea. And so it's kind of like that too. I just cut out these images and put it all together. Yeah.
All right,
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we should announce some of the winners, and then we'll do some more audience Q&A before we wrap up.
I'll put this on the screen again that you can, there's a Grand People's Party next Saturday at the same time on Zoom. Go to jamessolheim.com to find the link. My website looks like that, so you can find it in that green lettering down there. And then we're going to have a Grand People's Club if you send your email address to me at jamessolheim.com. So, okay, go ahead, Shane.
All right. So we drew 5 names from people who had already ordered, and so we're going to announce those names now. And then on Monday we will draw again for 5 more people to win, 5 different people to win. So James has given us copies of It's Disgusting and We Ate It. So you will not only get a great copy of Grandmas Are Greater Than Great, but for 5 extra lucky people, they will get a copy of It's Disgusting and We Ate It. But the 5 winners that I'm announcing now are Aisha Morgan, August Greitens, Teresa Reese, Janet Ackerman, and one of my childhood friends, Stephanie Collins. So those are the 5 winners today, and you will get a copy of that. And this is yay! Congratulations, everyone! And there's also some consolation prizes, so we'll be sure to put those in with orders that did not get to win one of the copies of the book, but you will get a consolation prize. And everyone will get a signed book. James and Derek have both signed book plates for the books, so the copies will be signed, and you can order those at left-bank.com. But we do have a couple more questions, and I think that the one Annie W. asked, what program do you use to draw? And I think you talked a little bit about Adobe Acrobat, but
I use Adobe Photoshop to
Adobe Photoshop.
Yeah.
Do you use that for all of your illustration? Do you do animation in a different program?
Yeah, so I'm actually not technically an animator. I'm a designer for TV shows as well. So all I do is draw basically every single day. And I use Photoshop to do that for the TV work that I do as well. And for the illustrative stuff I do is on Photoshop as well.
Great. Matthew, first off, there have been so many compliments throughout about how beautiful the illustration is, the great words, the beautiful story. So definitely thank you all so much for those incredible comments. I'll share those with James and Derek after the event. Matthew is asking, what's a special moment you remember most about your grandma as a young boy?
Why do you go?
Okay. Well, there's so many of them. In the front of the book, it talks about those grandma foods that are hard to pronounce. And so both my grandmas made this food called lefse, which is like tortillas made out of potatoes. And so I just remember going there moments over and over again and having lefse every time we went to visit. And other Norwegian foods like sandbuckles, which are like cookies with uh, in different shapes of hearts and round uh, like cups and so forth. Um, and oh, just things that they did in general when we went and visited them, like uh, the big, well, quilts, because my grandma Peterson would make these giant quilts, and we would sleep. It was North Dakota, so we would sleep in these beds with the mounds of quilts that you couldn't move under because they were so heavy. And then I remember my grandma Solheim would, um, she lived next to this big train. And so the trains would come roaring through, and we would imagine, who are those people in those trains that are crashing through every day? So Derek, how about you?
Well, I was very lucky that I grew up with a grandma and a great grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I remember with my great grandma, one of the things I remembered about her was her skin. So at this point, she was very old, and I remember I would grab her skin like this in her arm, and like, you have elephant skin because it was so wrinkled, and I'd say, you have elephant skin, grandma. And then for my other grandma, one of the things I remember is that we lived in the Philippines at this time, so there was to avoid being so sweaty, you would always use baby powder. So I remember she always smelled like baby powder. Oh, the other thing is that she always also wore jasmine. She would wear jasmine flowers around her neck, so she always smelled like baby powder and jasmine. So those are one of the things I remember, just how they smell, and my great grandma's elephant skin. That was something because she laughed so hard when I said that. So yeah, that was one of the things I remember about growing up with these great grandmas.
We have people watching from literally all over the world right now, which is
Hi, everybody.
Super excited that everyone is here joining us. I don't know I think I caught all the questions. There are so many compliments in here that I'm making sure that I found all the questions. But I'm really just thrilled with all the people that are watching and how many people just are talking about their grandparents. And I think that's really the beauty of this book, because it really does make everyone think about their grandparents, parents, even. So I know that I'm getting a copy of the book for my grandma, because I know that she will love to read it to the great grandkids, who is still in the same hometown that James and I grew up in. So that's fantastic. And I think that might be all the questions. I think we got them all. So I want to thank everyone. Did you have anything else that you wanted to chat about this morning that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Well, thanks for coming, everybody, and hope to see you again next week at the same time, because we're having a grand people's party. So grandparents, bring your grandchildren, or moms, bring your grandchildren, or fathers, bring your, not grandchildren, moms, bring your children, and dads, bring your children, and children, bring your relatives, and we'll just get together and do activities next Saturday at 11. And that's going to be on Zoom, so you can watch each other and have fun together. What do you want to say, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, thank you everybody for coming, supporting us in this book launch. I really hope you guys like our book. It was a delight to put it together. And yeah, I hope you and your grandparents all like it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I just shared the link again, so anyone that missed it the first time, go order a copy of the book, and you are entered to win another copy of James's book. And I did share some of your other work, Derek, so that people, because they were very loving of your artwork, so interested in some of your other books too. So I shared those because they're really fantastic as well. So I look forward to doing future events with you, hopefully next time in person, because I think this was such a great event, and really happy to have you here for Left Bank Books. To everyone watching from literally all over the world, thank you for joining us, and we have a lot of great events planned. We have another one this afternoon with funny enough, one of James's friends from when he was in St. Louis, and Lecky, will be in conversation with Everina Maxwell, who is a UK debut author for Winter's Orbit. So we have lots of great events planned. You can find them on our Facebook, on YouTube, and we will see you all next time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye,
for coming.
everybody.